Motion passes 5-0. Section 3 is comments from the public. There is no one here, so we'll move into Section 4 presentations. And we have an up
She
group
didn't sign in.
update.
She's
I'm
not,
sorry,
she's not here to speak.
did I miss something?
Yeah, nobody signed in.
Yeah, right.
You're right, exactly.
Yeah. You didn't sign in, you know. Were you planning to speak? No. Okay, okay. Section 4, we have an update from the GPD group by Mr. Jason Nolde. Mr. Leung, would you like to do any introduction for that, or? should we just-
Absolutely, yeah. I want to thank Mr. Nodi for being here on short notice. We've got a lot of things going on with GPD, one being the hillside, and that's what he's primarily here for tonight, because we have a proposal on the board agenda for the board to vote on that is related to the hillside. We've also started working with them on our fire alarm system here in the middle school, high school, with the goal, if we start here pretty soon, to be ready for the 25-26 school year. So, I think that's one of the things that he can speak to with all of their extensive work in schools, is that timing is everything in this business, and certainly the hillside's one of those things that can only be done in the summer months. And he's here to give an update or answer your questions related to the proposal that they provided for us, and give you the status of the Hill as of September 4th, 2024. So, Jason, thank you for taking the time to be here tonight.
Evening. Okay, so I just put together the short presentation to kind of go through just what we've reviewed with the board previously, talk through budget, schedule, and then, mostly here to answer any questions that there may be from your side. So that's the agenda. Just a quick overview of what we had previously done. This was sort of the recommendations that came out of the studies that and work that we had done. The two lines there indicating the areas where we're recommending some additional hillside stabilization.
Are you talking about the yellow line or the blue line?
These blue lines would represent kind of where that stabilization standpoint would be going. But those are the red lines are the different profile analysis that we had completed. Those are the two areas where we had some, based on the analysis, where we had some concerns with the stabilization and made some recommendations to provide some remediation. And what we were looking at is this GeoPier type system that, again, I wish Del could be here. He's our geotech engineer. He can go into the nuts and bolts of this a lot better than I can, but this provides this additional steel reinforcement that we put in the hillside, creates that stabilization to create the safety factor that we're looking for. If we were building like a new structure, what kind of safety factor we would have on a hillside structure. And this provides that for it. Unfortunately, Del just had surgery, so he's recovering currently right now, so he couldn't make tonight's meeting. But
Is this the same system you would use in both sections of the Hill then?
yes, that was what was recommended. And again, this was part of the previous, Del was here and talked to the board about this. None of this has changed from what we recommended from before. We did talk about going back, I guess, maybe though, the blue line that's on the left, that's not near the pool area there, that is currently showing it going through the bleachers as well. That's really kind of the extent that we would have initially recommended. The school administration has asked if whether we can avoid impacting the bleachers and still get a safety, a level of safety factor that we feel comfortable with, and the answer was yes, that we would be. We still think that would be that would get us to the level that we feel comfortable with. So that was maybe the one change to this exhibit here that we have. So in terms of budget, we had previously, using both of those areas, had received a quote, and again, this is hasn't been bid, but received a quote for $64,000. We put in a contingency allowance in case, you know, we identify that one of the locations has a utility or something that may need to be adjusted. I don't think that would be something that we need, but any sort of time we dig into something that's not completely known, it's not all new, we do recommend carrying something within the bid just to, so that we don't have to come back to the board and ask, you know, for additional funds. If we don't use it, it goes back to the school, obviously, so it's just a built-in contingency. That provides a total of just under 400,000. That quote was from 2023. We're looking at doing the work in summer of 2025, so we did build into the updated estimate here some additional escalation just based on traditional increases that we see on an annual basis. So that gives us a new construction total of approximately 431,000. The soft costs are costs that are not borne by the contractor, but you know, it's part of the project. Our fees are included in that. That was part of the fee proposal that we submitted. So part of our fee proposal is doing some additional surveying of to get the actual existing topography that we have back there, doing the additional engineering, and then providing the construction administration support through bidding and the actual construction work. As part of that, we actually did also include some additional testing during construction as well, so that we can, for some of the compaction and whatnot that we would look for during construction. So we have some additional geotech services that would happen during construction as well built into that. And then some of the other recommended budget items to carry gives you an overall number for this project. A lot of these are placeholders that, you know, I wouldn't anticipate we would fully use all of those, but going into a project, what we would recommend carrying for a budget. And then schedule. So if we were to be issued a notice to proceed, I did check kind of the availability of our survey group as it stands, and we you know, currently have some availability, so I think we could jump on this pretty quickly. We've built in 3 weeks to obtain that field work, and then additional 3 weeks to start pulling the CAD documents available, or CAD information together. From there, then our engineering team can pull together the documents. Again, that's another 4 to 6 weeks. So we're looking at bidding right around end of November, December potentially, which is a good time for what we're looking for this project. We know that the work will not get started until June, after June 9th, I think is what we identified, after the last main track event or use, because we will not be able to use the field and the tracks during this work. So, but we do want to have this work bid during this time, because these contractors, they get very busy during that summer window, because that's when a lot of their work takes place. So this is a good opportunity to lock them in. We would put in our bid documents the time restrictions in terms of when access to the site is available, but lock them in early to ensure that we have that availability.
Is steel, is it readily available right now?
Yeah, I haven't heard. I mean, at one time that was a big issue that we were facing in the industry, but at this point that has stabilized. There are a few sectors that are still experiencing some of that, but not steel.
Mr. Nolde, could you explain briefly what the closeout phase is?
Closeout is less of a burden on this kind of project, but that's where we collect the as-built documents. So if one of the locations from what we initially designed had to move because of a field condition, that the contractor documents that. So it's collecting that information, the warranty information, the those are sort of the closeout pieces that we get towards the end before we do a recommended final payment to the contractor that would get processed.
Based upon the graphic, it appears that the forecast is that this project could be completely wrapped in about 6 weeks, 2 months' timeframes,
That's what we've been told, yeah.
which would be next summer, ideally.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then what about, I know we have to worry about protecting the track
Yep.
from some of the heavy equipment, and is that factored into your proposed costs?
Yes, correct. And some reseeding of the grass as well, so restabilization of the.
And then
the
as far
lawn.
as the field goes, like the actual football field itself, do you anticipate that being off limits completely during that time? Would we have to look to maybe relocate to the grass fields over on the side, or is that also going to be off limits?
I could probably follow up with that. I don't know for sure if there is access without disrupting the field, so I'd have to
Okay.
check on that.
Just, yeah, it's one of those other kind of parallel things running there is you still have to operate a school district while you guys are doing some really important work here, so we have to consider those things if we have to find alternate locations for practices or
Yeah,
camps or things like that.
I would think potentially that there might be some disruption that takes place, but it wouldn't be during the entire portion of that project. So
Gotcha.
they have to get the equipment there, set up, kind of mobilized, and whatever that sort of time frame is, maybe it's, a couple of days for them to, a week maybe to do that, but then, and then a week when they demobilize as well.
You're talking about during construction, right?
Right,
So
during,
in
con-
summer purchases, not like
right, so,
in September and October of this year when they're just.
no, we're talking
Yeah.
specifically the June
Yep.
and July time. Yeah, and as he said, the goal is, June 10th is a Monday, we're out of school on June 6th. The goal is to be rolling on June 10th, so that may mean we need to do business a little differently even towards the end of the school year so you guys can get set up and ready to go. I don't know what that process looks like, so if I have to move graduation back indoors like in the old days, we could do that. But we're going to hopefully not have to do things like that.
Yeah, assuming we have a successful bidder, we would work through all of the contract stuff and get that all done early. But we would engage them somewhere probably around April, end of April, to have a pre-construction meeting to outline, have them review their construction schedule, their details, and some of the coordination with the administration and staff.
Hey, Jason, just had a question. If we're able to flip back to the budget, the amount from the proposal, the 91,400 that's going to be voted on tonight, that's rolled in with those soft
So
costs.
that
I
would
was
be the
wondering where that
combination of
was.
this 77,900, that's our design professional. And then we typically break this out in terms of a soft cost, the land survey, that's the topography, that work that we had.
Yeah, that was my question too, so it says 91,000 and something. That's in that,
That's in
somewhere,
This complete total here, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
that's
within
yep.
that.
It's the 13,500 in the bottom chart. It's that, and then it's the 77,900. If you add those two together, that's where you get their 91,400.
okay. But, but it's gonna be more than $91,000 based on those other charges.
These are other costs that would be the owner costs that are part of a project, a typical project. They're placeholders, they're not they're estimates.
Okay,
Most likely I try to be a little conservative and estimate high at this level. It's better to have that conversation later to say, yeah, it came in under that number, so.
so it's gonna be at least $91,000 and whatever.
Our fee is set based, that number will not change.
Okay.
That's based on
These are
what
the other
is.
costs that we may incur,
Yeah,
and you've estimated what they might be.
correct. Yep.
Okay.
So, Mr. Nolde, in the past presentation by Mr. Channels, I believe that he had gone into some detail about the boreholes that have been drilled and that there have been various types of water sampling done. Has there been or will there be any additional testing of the water sources in those wells?
That's,
Or is that a separate conversation? I'm not sure.
yes, that is not part of the proposal necessarily, is to do additional testing from that standpoint. I know we had kind of 2 rounds. We did some initial testing where we did some just straight borings, found some stuff that made us want to do some additional testing, and that's when we did those wildcat tests that I believe is what he called it. And we did that additional testing. We needed all that information to make our recommendation and to do the calculations in terms of determining the safety factor. As far as I know, that we're comfortable with the information that we've collected to make the recommendation.
So if, assuming the board were to go forward with this project as it's kind of fleshed out right now, the thinking is, my understanding is that the thought is that from an engineering perspective, that getting that slope to a 1.5 safety factor rating would include or encompass any potential water seepage or that type of a potential concern.
This is going to work to stabilize the hill. We're not necessarily doing, I think that initial study that we presented, one of the things that we were talking about was potentially reducing the water level to try to help with it. And we did that analysis and found that we still can't get the safety factor that we were looking for. So we were looking for, besides doing this steel reinforcement, could we just eliminate some of the water that we've seen there? And we didn't get to the safety factor that we felt comfortable with that method. So this is our recommendation, is to address the hillside, is to provide this steel reinforcement. But we are not necessarily addressing at this point, then we don't need to address the water concern at that point. Yes.
That risk gets controlled by the steel sheeting.
Correct.
process. Okay,
Yeah.
That's my words, but that's how I'm understanding it. Okay. Well, that's, okay, so that would not resolve, but that would address that concern, that issue that's been lurking about. Okay, thank you.
In the 2023 report, you were going to use sheet pile, and now we switched to the plate pile. Was there a reason, or was this
Yeah,
better
so
technology?
this system is less disruptive. We could still do the sheet pile system and achieve what we were looking for, but this is less disruptive, and it was a more cost-effective solution and still provide us the safety factor that we were looking for.
Would this system require any type of ongoing maintenance, that kind of professional maintenance, I mean, beyond what our facility staff might be able to do?
I'm not prepared to answer that. I'm sure there's probably periodic inspections that we would recommend, but I'll follow up with Dell or the appropriate people, and I can get back to Matt on that.
And we'd also had some conversations and all, as well as some of the engineering reports, topographic reports. I think it indicated that this shoring system, the steel plate shoring system, would also, I think, have the effect of mitigating any concerns that might be arising because, or have arisen because of foundation issues in the pool area?
Yeah, so that was part of the calculation that we did here at
Okay.
that profile number 5.
So it's another risk that gets picked up and kind of addressed
If that-
through this process?
Yeah, if that foundation wall was lower and acted more as a retaining wall right there, the safety factor would maybe have been reduced, and we necessarily didn't have to do something with the hillside. But based on the current elevation of that foundation, it didn't follow the original geotech report, as Dell had indicated. That is one of the reasons why we're recommending this hillside stabilization.
Thank you.
Hey, Jason, I had a question too. So, when the contractors come in and they're performing the work, looking at this map that we have here, where would they be positioned doing the work?
So, my understanding is essentially on that hill. We've talked about potentially maybe we can come down this way with it, and that's why I don't necessarily know about the track part of it, but I think we had concerns that that was gonna be too steep to get equipment down, so I believe they're gonna be coming across here. I'm not quite sure where the equipment parks, overnight, or I don't know all of that logistics yet, and some of it might not be until we have a contractor on board, but something that we could certainly work with staff and admin on.
So they're gonna fly a helicopter in?
So
Let me revise that
Drop
estimate.
list.
So your firm, as the kind of the project manager and the contractor, would work out and resolve, I mean, kind of technical issues, for example, the placement of the equipment, like Mr. Mucci was referring to, as well as if any of that hillside had to be cleaved out to make a level pad for them to be able to ground. And I assume that built into that would be replacement and
Correct.
landscaping.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. Restoring the landscaping to its current form.
The 2023 report talked about the profile 5 and the range of safety factor being, I guess, dependent on water seepage there and groundwater fluctuations. Do we need to look at groundwater and water seepage again before, I guess, making I guess, final decisions in that area? And kind of where that safety factor lies again over the last 2 years, or no?
Dell is comfortable that this is going to get us the safety factor. I'm not the geotech engineer, so I can't speak directly as a geotech engineer, but having the past conversations with him on it, this is additional. I think I addressed it before. Additional testing isn't needed at this point. This is kind of just this is the recommendation that we put forth to get that hillside stabilized. And I think at that time too, we said that it's recommended to be done within, the next year or so, just because that safety factor is so low compared to where we would typically like to see it. So I wouldn't put it off, I don't think, any further if you could.
Questions, everybody?
Mr. Nolde, I remember, I think the last time we met, maybe this was just with Mr. Channels, but I think I recall that the sequence of events went to the idea that this should probably be one of the district's first capital outlays, because in my words, it's kind of like building a house where you have to have a good foundation upon which to make other improvements or make other changes. Is that still a fair assessment of the
Yeah.
sequence of this, or the timing of this, the importance of it, I should say?
Yeah, I mean, you're obviously in a difficult position because you have a lot of, I guess, options in terms of prioritizing some of the work. But yes, this was, just given again, especially where the profile 5 was, moving forward with that one was considered, was highly recommended. Yeah, I mean, how to prioritize against other stuff is difficult, but that's the one that has the greatest potential risk. Again, it's saying basically right now that the numbers say that it should work, right? The safety factor is 1, but that doesn't build in any of that we typically want to see. And engineering is not an exact science. It's still based on a lot of factors that we're trying to make assumptions on. So that's led us to make that recommendation that we did.
But its safety factor was based on a range, based on the groundwater, which we haven't checked in a year and a half.
Right. I bet you Dell could tell you that is, in my past conversations with him, that while that fluctuates seasonally, annually, I don't think that changes all that greatly.
And the high number was 1.27, which is the same as
What are you asking then?
When you gave the range, was
saying,
that taken from multiple samples along that hill, or is it any given samples between that range? Could it be 1.27 along that whole hill, or is it some spots were 1.27, some spots were 1.0? Like, how many samples did you guys take on that hill? I think is, because it is a big range. All the others don't have a range.
Well, where we took the borings and where we took the water samples with the Wildcats, those are all indicated on this graphic right here. Yeah.
So I'm just saying it has the same safety factor as Profile 1 and Profile 2 at the high end of its range, which is 1.08 to 1.27, depending on the groundwater level.
Right, and they're
Yeah.
still all below the threshold that we're looking for.
Yeah.
And I think that one of my takeaways from this conversation is that the project as currently contemplated, if done, say by next June or July, that it would get to a safety factor of, say, 1.5 for that entire length of that hillside, and that's an acceptable engineering load factor or what have you, and that would also encompass or address the potential water seepage, whether it's seasonal or more ongoing than that. That's my understanding. It would have the effect of controlling or managing that risk or that potential.
Yeah, I believe you're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Have anything else? No? Okay. So we had some good questions and good discussion, I think.
Yeah.
Everybody feel comfortable moving forward?
Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
Thanks
very
for
much.
all your work.
Okay, now move into section 5, treasurer's business.
Thank you, Mr. Sojaki. A couple items tonight for approval. I ask for items 5A, 6A through 6D for approval tonight.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for those items.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Dobbins.
Second?
Is that Mrs. Etter? Okay. Any discussion or comments?
Yep, item 6A, we just have two new vendors. If I click on our lead sheet, they're both for district landscaping supplies. The estimated amount for each is $3,000 for the entire year that we have for the two. If I close out of that item, item 6B, purchase orders over 5,000, we just have one. That is for Edleo. That's a annual cost, 7/1/24 to 6/30/25. That amount is $7,110. Website. Item 6C, then and now. We have two. Edleo, the invoice is dated 7/1, for we're approving the purchase order tonight, September 4th. And Huddle, the invoice is dated August 16th, and the purchase order was approved August 21st. Item 6D is the Science of Reading stipends. So in the public content, I summarized, tried to, the plan for the stipends to be paid. Mr. Young, feel free to jump in too.
Yeah, this is tied to House Bill 33, which was the budget bill over a year ago, and the governor's shift to the science of reading and focus on, a lot of focus on early childhood education. And in that effort, there were about $120 million was budgeted to get every teacher and administrator. Now, administrators don't receive a stipend, but all teachers, depending on what they teach and what grade level they teach, are to receive a stipend that's part of that budget bill. Essentially, what the school district has to do is they have to verify that the training has happened. which we will with the certificate, because there's a state learning management system that they must log into to take that course. And then we will pay as a district the stipend, and he'll talk about the details of the stipend, to the teachers, and then we have to seek reimbursement from the state of Ohio. It's similar to our solar discussion where you have to front the money and then you have to seek reimbursement at some other point. So we don't really know what that mechanism looks like yet. I'm sure it's going to be several hours of work by Mr. Muccio on the back end to seek the reimbursement for that. But I know he has taken the time to break down exactly how those stipends get paid out and what their amounts are.
Right, and we have, so the stipends would have to be completed, the courses, so it's a course that teachers would have to take, and there are two amounts, 1,200 and 400. These courses have to be completed before June 30th of 2025. And I believe the majority of our staff have already completed to date, so it's good news. What we would do is, like Mr. Young's saying, we would apply for reimbursement. Now, we have approximately, how many staff doing it? I have my notes below. We have 73 staff looking to complete this, 50 staff at the 1,200 and 23 staff at the 400. So that arrives at 69,200. So that's the amount we would be reimbursed from the Ohio Department of Education. On top of that is the state's reimbursing for the employer side of STRS contribution as well as the employer side of Medicare tax. Now that adds up to $10,691. Now there's some ambiguity in the law because Mr. Young had a certain idea in mind of how it would be paid, and I had a certain idea. So we went back and read it, and it's still
Still as clear as mud.
clear as mud. So it talks about the full amount of the stipend going out. So we met with Chat, the president, vice president, officers, and we discussed, compromise on this, and, it was figured, let's split that, employer pickup of STRS and Medicare, which is approximately 10,000, down the middle. So half would go to the teachers and half would go to the board, meaning the board would pay essentially $5,000 for these stipends.
So one of the stipulations was, and they warned very sternly at all the meetings we went to, we could not devote any of our professional development days to allow teachers to work on this. Because if they're getting a stipend and they're being paid for a professional development day, that would be a double payment. So the teachers have to do this on their own time, in the summertime, weekends, nights, essentially whenever they have the time to do it. But we cannot, I'm not saying every district's following that, but I think they were pretty clear in the guidance document, and you've spoken to people, the auditor types, and they really warned you. A, don't not do this training, it's required by law, and B, don't do it on company time. The devoted company time for other professional development. So, $5,345 is I spend that easily on our professional development for just a couple grade levels each year, usually with grant funds.
So the only thing that we're splitting is the contribution, not the, we're getting fully reimbursed for the stipend itself.
Mhm.
And then
Correct.
we're splitting the
The retirement.
The retirement.
Right.
Mhm.
Because essentially, when we were looking at how this was going to happen, sometimes I kind of question some of the people down in Columbus when they write these bills. Do they, really understand from point A to point Z? The answer is no, they don't. So that's clear. And then, from working, through the numbers, the reimbursement was going to be on the employer side. So there's a certain percentage that comes back for Medicare tax. There's a certain percentage that comes back for STRS contributions. That was to be picked up in this law. And then looking at the verbiage where it talks about the full amount of the stipend going out to the teacher, again, that's where it's clear as mud because, two of us sitting down, we had two different calculations.
You came up with a third. Yeah.
Yeah, so, this way from, looking at it and discussing with the union, coming with compromise, I think at the end of the day, we felt was reasonable. So that's why we bring it forward as the recommendation tonight. And those are the items I have. And we would look to make the payment for the first round of teachers who had completed this training in the month of October. And then any teacher
No, it's every teacher regardless of subject. So you have high school elective teachers teaching physical education, art, and music who have to do a science of reading training in addition to English teacher. Yeah, it's actually, if you're at the elementary level, because of the nature of their license, for example, Mr. Bertolone is a good example. He has a K through 12 music license. He's housed in the elementary school, but his license covers K through 12. So he had two options. He could do the $1,200 option because he's in the K through 5 building, but that was 22 hours of training. Or he could do essentially use his license and assume that he's a high school because he is licensed for high school or middle school, get the $400 stipend, but spend 7.5 hours on it. So it was proportional, but they had that option. You know, if he wanted to take the larger stipend, he would have had to have done more work. Your elementary people and your intervention specialists and your reading teachers almost all have to do that 21 to 22-hour training. And that's in addition to the dyslexia training that was required by law the year prior to start being implemented, that you do not get a stipend for, but we could do, and we did, on our professional development days. And now we're moving that training over here to 4 through 12, it'd be the 6 through 12 intervention specialists. So they have to do science of reading and dyslexia this year. It's a lot. The good thing is we're really starting to see great results next door with what we were doing. So I would say I give our staff an A+ in their attitude, willingness, mindset to pivot to the science of reading and do everything that they've been asked to do and required to do. A+, really is, because you've heard some horror stories from some of your other people.
Well, please extend my gratitude to the teaching staff who are rolling up their sleeves and taking care of this project. Thank you. And it's all for the benefit of our students.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Mrs. Decker.
Aye.
Ms. Prowse.
Aye.
Mr. Suchek.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Treasurer's discussion and comments, section 8.
Just two tonight. The first one is the Auditor of State required fraud training. I sent out an email to all staff, and, just kind of giving a quick little summary of what it is. So there's a new training, why it's happening. Ohio Revised Code was amended back in March of this year. That requires the Auditor of State to create training material detailing Ohio's fraud reporting system and the means of reporting fraud, waste, and abuse. Both current employees and elected officials are required to complete the training within 90 days beginning September 1st. It's an 8-minute video, and then upon successful completion, a certificate will be provided. And I've given district-wide the date of November 1st. So if everybody can send me their certificates by Friday, November 1st, leaves a little buffer time before the end of November just to gather everything. And then we accomplish this requirement from the United States Office. Matt, you watched it.
I finished. I sent you my certificate. I finished.
I watched it, I didn't get a certificate, so I didn't watch it.
Why didn't you get a certificate?
He said it's a state-created system. So, does that answer your question?
It doesn't
Yes,
work.
it does. I'm sorry, you had to watch it again.
8 minutes.
And then the second item, 8B, is OSBA 2024 Capital Conference, hotel registration. So the hotel registration portal opens Tuesday, September 17th at 9 a.m. So that's when I'm going to go in and try to get us the closest hotel to the conference. Fingers crossed. What I need today is just to know the number of people going. And remember, registration is $375 per person, or if we have more than 6 people, it's a flat fee of $2,600. Do we know? So I think the 3 of us are going. And then,
I cannot go.
okay.
I'm a definite maybe.
Okay. We'll sign you up, Ben.
I was thinking, I mean, Sunday, Monday, but it only makes sense if
$375 is worthwhile because, the cost benefit is so, the cost is small, relatively speaking, the benefit's large because of what the capital conference provides, so. And we can have additional administrators go too if we hit that, 2,600, so make it more.
So Mr. Dutray been down there today, right? Is our presentation?
Yeah, there's been some changes to that I have to communicate based on what Mr. McBride told me. Our presentation is part of their legal series, and they want him to have a more heavier presence in the presentation, and maybe not time for the others. So let's talk about that. Yeah.
So, and book you down for going, and you'll look around between Sunday, Monday.
Yeah, I would like, yes, every
Gotcha.
Monday. Mhm.
Okay.
And you can put me down.
Can put me down, but I will say that my wife's having some surgery in a few weeks, so that's the uncertainty I have, but I'm gonna say yes at this point.
Gotcha.
Give me enough time.
And then I'll work on the hotels, and I can always modify the hotel reservations after the fact, but it sounds like, Jen, you would just need Sunday night.
Yep.
And then Mark, I'll book you for the full-time event.
Please, yeah, and I'll get back to you before the 17th.
Awesome. And then the annual business meeting delegate info has been updated, and those emails hopefully made its way over to you.
I saw it.
I did.
So I think we're all set, capital
Thank you.
conference.
Okay, very good,
All right.
thanks. Yes. Move into section 9 then, superintendent's business.
All right, thank you. So for consideration tonight, I have 9A and B, 10A and B, and item 11A for your consideration.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for those items.
So moved?
Moved by Ms. Decker,
Second?
second by Mr. Dobbins. Any discussion?
Okay. So item 9, this is superintendent's business, general business. We have 2 items here. First is for Mrs. Deal to participate in the Educational Office Professionals of Ohio. It's a network membership fee of $20. It allows her to work with people in job-alike roles at the administrative assistant level, specifically central office. This was approved for her last year as well, so this is not a new ad, it's just a request to renew it. So item B, this is to amend the 20 through 24 contract for Mrs. Houchin. You recall her contract ended on July 31st, but there was still this piece of vacation payout, and back in 2021, the administrative, supervisory, and exempt classified employees' schedule of benefits, that's a mouthful, was modified so that the maximum vacation day payout increased from 5 days to 10 days. And on June 10th of 2021, Mr. Evans had authorized in an email for all of the administrators, if they were at 5, to move to 10. That happened in email alone and needed to have board action to modify the contract. So 3.5 years later, here we're modifying it based on that email that was sent back in June of 2021. So that's what this does. It just increases that from 5 to, and starting in 21, she actually had been paid out 10 days and 10 days. This is the last year, and we just needed that official action to happen. So that had already been happening based on that email confirmation. We just are dotting our I's and crossing our T's. Okay? But that was something that has been left over, and we've been working about a month and a half to resolve that. 10, this is superintendent's business of employment and supplemental positions. So we have a few chat contracts. New this year, based on this latest contract, is a supplemental called the PTO liaison. This ensures that we have presence at the PTO meetings by our teaching staff, a representative. At the elementary school, we have 2 individuals who are going to split that supplemental. That's Mr. Bertoloni at 50% and Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith's great because she's an alumnus, she's a community member, she's a mother, and she's a teacher. So she hits an awful lot of, or checks a lot of boxes for us. And then over at the middle school, we have Shelley Studier as that individual. Now, we don't have one for high school yet because we're just now, with this particular PTO, they're really trying to integrate themselves into the middle school, and hopefully as the kids keep moving, we'll be a full district PTO. Then we have class advisor for Mrs. Wojtek that had not been approved. She's a co-advisor. Assistant football coach, actually, I believe Mr. Durazio, Dad Durazio, had been coaching, and he, because of time commitments, is going to switch to volunteer, and Mr. Ranella is going to step in and take that. So we're not adding that contract. It's actually swapping out. Mr. Durazio is going to go from a paid position, which he had not been paid yet, so he's going to go to volunteer, and then Mr. Ranella is going to slide into that paid position. And then we have an open gym supervisor for the fall. So those are the supplementals that are there. Back on August 7th, we approved a 36-month contract for the security, fire, and elevator data line upgrades with AT&T. We forgot to attach the two contracts. Okay, so we voted to approve it, but we wanted to make sure that those contracts were actually adopted at a board meeting. So this is just to accept the agreement with AT&T for those services. One is for a contract for the copper lines, and then the other one is for the communication boxes that tie into the security, fire, and elevators. So that's why there's two contracts, because there were two different services that they were providing. And then finally, number 11, this is under agreements, contracts, and memberships. This was what we were talking about with Mr. Nolde, the proposal of $91,400, which, based on the number he gave of $576,600, that would be including this $91,400 and the total cost of the Hillside project.
Going
So
back to the contracts?
Yes.
Are they, the AT&T ones?
Yes.
Those don't look like much of anything. They don't even talk, I mean, I don't even know what
Well,
we're,
so what's,
there's no amounts in there, there's no, it
yeah,
just
so
says
what's
master agreement. Oh, you have to click on it.
interesting, you have to click on the master agreements within the attachments. Yeah,
Oh, for goodness, okay.
That's,
Well, that's kind of, shouldn't they have just been
Inconvenience.
out there
yeah.
to see?
Yeah, so it takes you online, and then there's a PDF version, and then this is what it looks like. That's your agreement. Two-pager. Those are the only 5 items I have, short agenda.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? All right, Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stagno.
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Ms. Prowse.
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Superintendent's,
Yep.
comments, section
Yeah,
12.
I'll try to do my best to be brief here. The state report card's supposed to be released in mid-September, so by state law, I have to do a presentation, or somebody does, within 60 days of the release of the report card. So I'll plan to do that at the first meeting in October to give you a full comprehensive report of how we did. We're going to be a 5-star district, 5-star high school, 5-star middle school, and 5-star elementary school. Out of 25 total stars, we're going to get 22 of the 25. So, again, we'll see how we fall, but I'm really proud of the efforts of the staff and the kids, students, and the families that support them as well. So, definitely a team effort. One of my goals is to get the BEST committee up and running again. It's Superintendent's Committee. I still feel it's extremely valuable, and I really would like to get that going in it is September. In September, that's this month. So I'm going to have to put some communication out here really soon. The goal is for Mr. Burek and I to facilitate that. It's a superintendent's committee. Because I think with this focus, in my opinion, shifting to maybe long-term facilities planning, as well as the finances connected to that, I think we have enough that we could cover a full year. And that's where I could really see a subcommittee forming that has to do with specific parts of the facility. So if we wanted to talk about natatorium, that could be a subcommittee within that group. If we wanted to talk about elementary school playgrounds, because playgrounds cost you $100,000 to $200,000 to replace. Everything is a cost. So even if it was by project, and some people would say, hey, I would just really like to be involved in the fire alarm project. I'd just like to see it from start to finish. We can really talk about where people's interests lie when it comes to that. So our goal is to have 8 dates would be the goal, to have 8 dates throughout the year and to not cancel any of them, regardless of rain, snow, sleet, hail, holidays, or anything. I think it's important that we stick to this because people do an awful lot of hard work. They put a time into it, and I do not want people to waste their time. So speaking of facilities, so Jason gave you the update on the Hill. I received this week their proposal for the fire system to do a similar project management. That's going to be coming to you probably at the next board meeting, and that really falls into what would be considered urgent necessity. I calculated if we had to do fire watch at $50 an hour, 24 hours a day for 365 days, you're talking something around $450,000 is that estimated cost of having a human being monitor this school should that fire system go down again. I'd rather put our money into an actual system that can be fixed. With respect to the pool, I know Jason received the specs from the engineers today with regard to the hangars, so that is moving up about at the timeline they had given us to determine, what that cost is going to be and when it's going to get fixed. We did have one company, we've contacted 3 companies about the voids. So let's back that up. GPRS came out, they were the group that did the 2021 scan, they did the 2024 scan. They're going to be putting together a comparison report for us. That way, I can read the report and I see it has more detail than the first report, but I really want to know what has expanded. Like I can go in and see, okay, there are deep end voids now, which we didn't have before. But to know how deep they are and what the actual project's going to be, you have to now go to that next step, and that would be a company, A1 Concrete today I was speaking to their representative. He's out walking the pool. He's going to give an estimated cost. My concern with that is he anticipates that cost being over $50,000 just for that single. He doesn't really know what he's looking for until they drill holes into the pool. They're not going to drill holes until we sign on with them. Now, we also have another company coming out Friday, is it? Second company, the third company has not returned our call. But these are all companies that GPD recommended to reach out to. So we're following that timeline and that process to check that out. One thing that the representative said today is we really need to check with our engineers to determine if the voids and the hillside are 2 separate issues. Because if they're disconnected, then you can fill voids, correct that. If it's, again, there's a cost factor there we would have to go into. That's an unknown right now, but you could, if the cost is right, you could do that and not worry about wasting your money until the hill's fixed.
Voids are only 6 inches under the pool.
Yeah,
So I asked
yeah,
them about the water.
yeah, there's 6 inches. I think maybe one is at 10. So they're anywhere from between 6 and 10 inches deep. So, and the guy explained the process, and he seems to think, and I want to say, and again, I'm not an engineer, but I thought Dell said he didn't think that the 2 were connected. I thought in a conversation I had with him, but had a lot of conversations about. Yeah, that's accurate. Good, thank you. That's why I have you. So that's all of that is a consideration. In the meantime, we are getting deep into all this, and I'm concerned about having a spot because I can't control timelines for our swim team now. We're working on independence. If we can't do our own facility, we're working on independence. We came back last Friday and said no, but then we were going to come back with another ask. We know that Brooklyn City of Brooklyn has availability, but that's at an impossible time to me. It's 5:30 in the morning. You never make it to school on time. And then Cleveland State they've actually given us 4 lanes of lifeguard, $5,800 for the whole season, but that's at 7:30 at night. So and we're trying to work on independence and seeing if there's something closer, but this is where we are, and we're getting close to a point where we have to make a decision about if we go month to month somewhere and then let all this happen, or if we just commit farther out. But working as diligently with my team as I can to get all this stuff working. I feel like we've accomplished a lot in 5 weeks, but I'm at the mercy of some other factors here. But that's kind of a facilities update, and I look forward to maybe rebranding that best committee to dive
Seven
into this.
Hills have a pool? That might be, their indoor rec center has a pool, right?
Yeah,
Has to do with like the lane size and other
Has
factors.
floor lane.
yeah, we've reached out to Mayfield. I thought we reached out to Seven Hills.
Mr. Calder's,
We've reached out to
they don't necessarily like getting back to us.
Yeah.
seven different places
I was
we've
just
reached out to.
thinking Seven Hills isn't that far away, and I thought they had a pool.
Yeah.
We do have
Cleveland-
a pool, and they would, it shuts down at 8:45 in the evening. Before that, it's public use from 6 in the morning, roughly.
Yeah.
So that's the timeframes you'd be looking at, I assume. I could be wrong about the 6 in the morning. It
Even
might
when
be
like our
later.
pool's operational, we get people to rent our pool out previously. And, again, there's a lot of programming in place in pools that are operational in the area. So, a lot of other districts don't have pools. That's a luxury for us. It's operational, so you're always challenged to find times that are available, and compete with all the other schools that are looking for, lanes and things of that nature.
So,
Understood.
so we'll continue to monitor this, but again, we're getting September 4th already. It's hard to believe. Finally, I just want to congratulate Mrs. Runger. I know you're not listening. On the birth of your baby, TJ, last night came Mrs. Runger's soccer coach. Baby came early. Babies do their thing, so congratulations to her on baby TJ. Doing very well, healthy, last I
TJ
heard.
stand for?
Thomas John. She joked about Tommy John. Yes, I know it. It's named after her husband and her husband's dad as well. So the baby is, I don't know if it's the
Thomas
third.
John,
Thomas John Runger. So.
TJ.
TJ. Yeah,
Sounds
Yeah,
like
it's-
a great name.
it's amazing. Very happy for her.
Set up to be an athlete.
All right, I'll
Congratulations.
shut it off. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Young, did Jason give any update on, like, as far as timing of the hangars? I know he got numbers back.
We're getting the report tomorrow morning or
Uh-huh.
tonight, and then once we get that information, then there'll be vendors for that that will then.
And he had said that was a 2-week, potentially 2-week thing, and then 2 weeks after that, he thought. So it's 2 to 5 weeks, I think.
As far as the
If it
repair?
fits, to be repaired. At least that's the timeline that he had given us. It was up to a 10-week total timeline. And I think we're still on that, maybe a week behind. But we'll keep. He just got those specs, and actually that's why I had asked Mr. Burek on the way out to find out the status of where we are, what happens next. So we'll get those tomorrow, and then I'll follow up with an email as to get a more updated timeline, so I can provide that to you in my Friday update. Okay.
I know there's concerns earlier with timeframes and getting back to us. They've been fantastic. We've had a lot of meetings and phone calls and super responsive. Just when you ask and you need stuff, they're really helpful.
Yeah, and I checked in. Ohio Schools Council is a fantastic organization, and they were asking about some of our facilities projects, and I talked to them about GPD doing a lot of our work, and nothing but high praise for the company overall. They thought we had one of the best companies, and they are affiliated, which means they get state pricing on items, so you don't have to go out to bid on certain things with them because we are getting the cheapest rate that's out there. So, and Mr. Burek he and Mr. Zerbola have been bulldogs when it comes to following up multiple times. Poor Jason had COVID, I believe, and we were contacting him, say, can you show up and do a presentation or not? Well, I got COVID. Yeah, but what about next Wednesday? Do you have COVID? That
He
type
didn't-
of
To
thing.
be honest, I thought he was a little ill this evening.
He's probably, I think he's about 10 days recovered from it. But
Can we go back to the voids for just a moment? Does anybody know what's causing the voids in the first place? Has that ever been discussed?
I can't speculate on that.
Okay.
I mean, those voids could have been forming for the last 50 years.
That's true.
I mean, you put it in context, it's taken 50 years to get to that point. Now we know that maybe they've increased in number, but when they gave you the original report in 2021, they said there could be errors in the report itself, so that didn't necessarily mean that those voids weren't there, they just weren't detectable enough. Or
Right.
so they're really not gonna know anything until they actually drill holes.
Okay, just curious.
Yeah.
Because of course, that leads to, is the fix reasonably permanent, or are we back here again in 2 years?
No, from what they described, the work that they do, at least this one company, has really good results. They use a special type of polymer, concrete. They drill the holes and they fill it until it gets to a certain level, and it's essentially just concrete in there. But then they put it under pressure to really pack it, and then it starts oozing up out of the holes. And when it's oozing up out of the holes, you know you've got complete fill in that void, no matter where it went. No matter what you can and can't see. Even their process of doing it when you're on an embankment it's pretty methodical how they go about doing it. So they said once they start it's a 2 to 4 week project to fill the voids. So I did ask that. He says it could be as soon as 2 weeks. They did a project for Giant Eagle. One of the Giant Eagles, 90,000 square feet. I think it was 90,000 square feet they did, and it took them about a month. It cost over $75,000. So, just don't know yet.
Okay,
So that's why we'll get multiple companies out here.
okay, thanks.
So the, excuse me.
Mm-hmm. Fire away.
piggybacking on that point, so the hangars project and the voids projects, either one.
Two separate projects.
Two separate, but I think I'm sensing that they're related in the sense of overall timing and availability.
I think that the timing of them are matching up pretty well. It's that somebody asked me if they were one project. I'm like, no, like the hangars have to be done regardless of what happens with the swimming pool in the short or long term, because we don't want to compromise the ceiling itself. That has to get done. In the meantime, you've got the voids that we would want to consider. Again, it's all about cost. We don't have that number yet, what that could look like.
But we wouldn't be putting water in the pool until the voids are filled, so that is kind of the project that is governing the timeline.
Right, and we're trying to take this as methodical as possible. Again, it's all about cost, and Matt Muccio and I have talked a lot about where the money's coming from, some of our capital improvement accounts we're going to pull from.
Facilities, the football, we've talked about expanding that billboard to include all athletic facilities, right?
We have talked about that as well. We know primarily that fund is likely, right, at least in the short term. We know we have to have money to replace football fields, so we want to make sure we got that amount of money, because that was the original intent. But then the hillside is actually an extension of the football field. So if that money can be used for the hillside, then you have those other capital accounts that can be used for other things. And it's a matter of strategically going through it and pulling from those funds until you can get the money coming in at the beginning of the year to start replacing some of those funds, that $440-ish thousand from the mill, right? The 1 mil PI. But those are part of the great conversations we can have through the BEST committee as well when talking about long-term projects.
And eventually the pool is a resource that the whole community and district can use that.
Well, I know when we just spoke to, we met with Mayor Bocci. He says when we do talk long-term about the pool, he definitely expressed interest in being part of that conversation and maybe even engaging the other two mayors in that conversation. So that's why I think it's important with that, building off what Mr. Evans had recommended, if we could take that BEST committee as a segue to have a subcommittee that draws interest in that and really find out what the community impact can be and what the community commitment could be. I mean, it's my opinion, I don't think the school long-term can continue to sustain it by itself. I just don't know where we're going to get the money to do that long term. But I'm with you. I think it's if you can come up with a mechanism, maybe there's somebody out there that wants to donate, a company. No, seriously. But that's the kind of things we were talking about with the mayor. It's like there's all kinds of mechanisms. We have to consider them because he also views it as an asset as well. And I think that's important. It's really important.
Used to get a lot of use.
What's that?
Used to get a lot of use. Even last year, last winter, it could have,
If there's a mechanism to bring that up to 2024, 2025 standards, again, depending on where this thing goes in the future, you could really reimagine that whole space by adding some amendment. I don't even know what the word is. Concession stands and things like that, so that then you could consider what bringing back swim classes could look like and things like that, and things for some of your senior citizen groups. And but we just got to get that. It's just it needs a lot of tender, loving care. So if we got people motivated to give that care, then that's an important start.
Yeah, it was really used a lot. When I first started using it, it was less than 10 years old. It was jammed on the nights that I went there with my kid. By the last time I did that sort of thing, there was like one family.
Yeah.
The use really fell off over the years. But then the hours had become more restricted, and all sorts of other factors entered into that. And I'm certainly not going to say that there is no interest anymore, or the interest is very limited, because I don't know.
Yeah, school safety is different than it was in the 1970s and 1980s, right? I mean, you can't just have people walking into your building while students are in the building. It just can't happen unless there's a mechanism to protect that. And that's part of that reimagining. When you talk about parking, well, you've lost parking across the street now. With that, now we have more staff than ever before on this campus. So now where do people park? There's all kinds of interesting, and there are always solutions. There are always solutions, but you have to reimagine things a little bit.
Okay, ready to move on? All right, next section is section 14, future agenda items. Anybody have any? Okay, moving on to 15, board comments. Anyone?
Did we already vote on going to that conference on October 2nd?
Oh, yeah, we do need to do that.
So that wasn't on this agenda. So
Um,
maybe that's a future item.
Yeah, but it does need to be on our next agenda.
Yeah,
I think
did we vote on that last
take a
time?
quick look. So,
We were talking about it, but I don't remember if we voted on it.
so August 21st, item 14A, approved attendance at OSB Capital Conference. We had everybody approved to go if they wanted to.
I'm not
this
talking
is,
about the Capital Conference,
oh,
I'm
Capital.
talking about.
This is the Northeast
That's the
Ohio.
one I'm talking about, the one that's gonna be in Wadsworth.
Yeah, at the Galaxy, Mr. Evans is being recognized as
Right.
the Northeast Region Superintendent of the Year, retired.
So we need to get that on the next agenda because the meeting
Maybe
is
it's
the
a
October.
$45 cost, I
Right.
believe, per person.
Right. Plus the time.
I mean, I think it would be, we've gone to them in the past,
Yeah, we have.
yeah,
It's just that
and we have a special reason this time, so I
this
think
one's
we should go.
special. And for me this time, I've already submitted the CVCC is going to cover me because their board president is getting an award as well. So since our board president's getting an award, all of us in the CVC board can get covered by them. So don't sign me up. The Career Center will sign me up.
That's good to
Every
know.
$45 I can find.
Thank you.
Okay, and we also, by the way, another thing we probably ought to talk about is the ESC meetings. I don't remember the dates, but I know there's one coming up, professional learning sessions. I think September 23rd is the next one. There's no fee for that, but once again, we would need approval because it qualifies for a stipend for us.
Yeah, that's offered by the ESC. I was at a meeting last week, and they took feedback. Last year was the first year they ran this series. It's just for board members.
First year, from COVID. They'd run it before COVID.
Yes, yeah, first year since COVID, and so they took a lot of the feedback from last year, and I feel like they've put together a nice program. And I think I included that last week for your review of that professional development series.
So we probably need a motion for that as well. I was planning to go to the one on the 23rd of September. I don't know about the other ones yet, but I thought I'd start with the first one personally. But do we want to do that with a formal motion next time, or is that all right?
Is that,
The-
when's our next board?
The next
meeting?
board meeting, I think, is after that date,
Yeah.
Oops,
right?
then we better do
Yeah.
it tonight.
I think it's the 25th.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm off.
So,
That's
yeah.
right, we got a 3-week gap coming up.
We can always retro it. You can attend and we can retro approve it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not
Yeah, I know I would want to attend that particular one.
I don't think any problem with that, retro approving, and feel free to attend any,
Okay,
anybody likes.
all right. I'll
Yeah, we
sign-
can do that on the 25th,
Okay,
I believe
I'll
is
sign
the
up for that one.
meeting.
Anybody else interested? I don't remember the topic off the top of my head, but it sounded interesting when I looked at it. Okay. Let's see if that covers all the stuff that I was going to talk about. Oh, and since we are in board comments, technically, although we kind of jumped back to the last couple items. There is on September 26th at 5 o'clock, which is the next Career Center board meeting, is a groundbreaking ceremony, official groundbreaking ceremony for the expansions that are happening there. And again, they're moving, I don't know that I can remember all of them. They're moving HVAC, construction, and something else, electrical, are all being moved and rebuilt and expanded to accommodate more students. And then they will be adding the one from Parks and Recreation, which will include the heavy equipment operation that you and I have talked about a couple of times. And that won't be happening until, I think, I don't know if they're going to have that ready by the next school year or the one after. I don't recall. But all of that, the groundbreaking is coming up, and then the projected completion is end of year 2025, so they hope to, for the second semester of that school year, to be able to start using some of the new facilities. So that's the plan on that. And that was all I had. Anybody else? Anything else?
Or just note that my understanding is that the local union's heavy equipment operating training site is in Richfield, which I
Right.
think is within.
It's not the same equipment, though.
Oh,
That's what I've been
I
told.
wouldn't be surprised if
I've-
it were, but I was
Yeah.
just saying that there may be some overlap there, but
Yeah.
that training site is in Richfield, which I think is part of the CVCC's footprint.
Yeah, right. But I don't believe that they cover the same type of equipment. I've asked that question. Apparently, it's not the same type of equipment that Parks and Recreation would use. Which, yeah, it does kind of make sense. Oh, and part of that reworking is the telecom tower, too. They're going to get a better space for that. Right now, it's sitting in one of the industrial areas. They're going to get that out of there and put it somewhere else. That was a pretty good one. They got that one on somebody paid for that. The school didn't have to pay for that telecom tower. Anyhow, okay. So if we're done with future agenda, board comments, move on to section 16. Should be noted that Board of Education members receive their agendas several days prior to the actual meeting, unless they have had considerable opportunity to study it, ask questions, and so on. Upcoming regular meetings, Wednesday, September 25th at 7, Wednesday, October 9th at 6, that's a work session, and Wednesday, October 23rd at 7. No other business to come before us. I'll make a motion that the board adjourn to executive session pursuant to ORC Section 12122G1 for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, evasion, or compensation of a public employee or official, or the investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee, official, licensee, or regulated individual. I've made that motion. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Dykow. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Souchaki?
Aye.
Mrs. Decker?
Aye.
Mrs. Etter?
Aye.
Ms. Kraus?
Aye.
Mr. Dodd?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. It is 8:16. We're going into executive session. No action will be taken when we